I never thought one text message could unravel 23 years of marriage. But that Thursday night, standing in my own kitchen, I learned exactly how quiet betrayal can be, until it isn't. My name is Vivian Cross. I'm 47, a mother, a wife, someone who believed in the life we'd built in a quiet Ohio suburb. Until the phone lit up, until she showed up at my door. This is the story of how I stayed calm while everything burned, and how I made sure the truth burned brighter. I was wiping down the counter when it happened. The kitchen smelled like roasted chicken and lemon cleaner, the way it always did on Thursday nights. Upstairs, the shower ran steady. Graham, taking his usual long, hot shower after work, I'd just set the last plate in the rack when his phone left casually on the granite island, lit up with a soft buzz. The screen glowed in the dim light. Last night meant everything to me. My hand froze mid-wipe. The dish towel just hung there. I stared at those words. Plain black text on a white screen. From a number I didn't know. My heart didn't race at first. It just stopped. Then it thudded. Once. Twice. Like it was catching up to reality. I don't snoop. I never have. But something shifted in me right then. I picked up the phone. His passcode was still our wedding date. Pathetic how easy that was. I opened the thread. Just enough to see it. Just enough to know. My thumbs moved before my brain caught up. I typed back, "Come over. She's gone." Hit send. The regret came instantly, a cold wave down my spine. But the message was already gone. Delivered. I put the phone back exactly where I found it. Stood there. Listened. The shower kept running. The clock on the wall kept ticking. The fridge hummed low and steady. 12 minutes. I counted every one. I lowered myself onto the bar stool, hands folded in my lap. My reflection in the dark window looked like a stranger. Calm face, steady eyes. Inside, my thoughts spun in tight little circles. Who is she? How long? Why tonight? But I didn't cry. Didn't call upstairs. I just waited. The doorbell rang. Cut through the house like a blade. I walked to the front door, smoothed my sweater, opened it. Simone Wexler stood on my porch. 49. Elegant, even under the porch light. Tailored coat. Subtle makeup that said she hadn't come by accident. Her face went pale when she saw me. "Where's Graham?" The words just hung there. I stepped aside. "Come in." She hesitated. 1 second, then crossed the threshold, heels clicking softly on the hardwood. Her perfume, expensive floral, filled the entryway, familiar in a way that turned my stomach. I closed the door behind her. Quiet click. We stood in the living room. Neither of us sat. The silence stretched. Upstairs, the shower stopped. Footsteps moved across the bathroom floor. Graham came down, hair still damp, gray t-shirt, joggers. He hit the landing, froze. His eyes flicked from me to Simone and back. No explosion of shock, just a flicker of something calculated. Surprised that I was there, witnessing this. "Vivian," he started, voice low. I didn't answer him. I watched Simone instead. The glance she gave him. A silent exchange passing between them. They weren't scrambling for excuses. They'd been here before, in this exact moment, at least in their minds. The realization settled over me like frost. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This had been building quietly, right under my own roof. Graham came down the last steps. "This isn't what it looks like." Simone touched her necklace, composing herself. "We should talk like adults, Vivian, all of us." I studied them both. The careful distance they kept. The way their eyes kept meeting for support. My voice came out even, almost gentle. "How long have you both been waiting for me to step aside?" The question landed. Graham shifted his weight. Simone's lips pressed together. For the first time, neither of them had an immediate answer. Before I tell you what happened, when the truth finally came out. Tell me something. What time is it where you're watching this from? I want to know how far this one travels. Let me back up first. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked louder in the quiet. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. Steam from Graham's shower still lingered in the air, mixing with Simone's perfume and the last of our family dinner. Everything ordinary, now poisoned. I felt the weight of that house pressing around me. Photos on the walls, old trophies on the shelf. A whole life poured into these rooms. Simone started to speak again, something about misunderstandings. I raised one hand. Slightly, not commanding, just enough. Graham was in the shower, then his phone lit up, and now you're here. Graham ran a hand through his damp hair. Vivian, please, let's not make this harder. I met his eyes, those familiar blue eyes that used to look at me like a promise. I'm not making it harder, Graham. I'm just done making it easy for you. The words hung there. Simone glanced toward the door, clearly wanted to leave. Trapped in the moment instead. When she finally moved to go, she brushed past the side table. A small envelope slipped from her coat pocket, fell to the floor. She didn't notice. I waited until the door closed behind her. Then I bent down and picked it up. Inside, a printed sheet. A lakeside condo, registered to some company I didn't recognize. My fingers tightened around the paper. Graham stood there, still damp from the shower that started all of this. For the first time in years, I looked at my husband and didn't recognize the man staring back. The latch clicked shut behind Simone like the period at the end of a sentence I never wanted to read. The house felt smaller, walls closer. I stood in the living room, envelope in hand, sharp edges against my palm. Graham turned to face me. "This isn't what you think," he said, words coming out practiced, almost rehearsed. "Simone and I, we've been talking, that's all." I didn't move. "Talking," I repeated, tasting the word. It felt too small for what I'd just seen pass between their eyes. Simone's car hadn't pulled away yet. I heard it idle outside before it finally drove off. Graham stepped closer, hands open, like he was approaching something startled. "We should sit down, talk like adults." Adults. I echoed the exact word Simone had used. They'd really coordinated their lines. I folded the envelope, slipped it into my sweater pocket. "How long have you two been preparing for this conversation?" He hesitated, glanced toward the stairs like the kids might suddenly appear, even though Trevor was 3 states away and Hailey was at school. "A few months. It just happened. Work stuff turned into more, but our marriage has been dead a while. Vivian, you know that." The words landed like stones in still water. I searched his face for guilt, for shame, discomfort, yes. No real surprise, no panic. They'd already built their story together, brick by careful brick. I thought of every late night he'd blamed on projects. The weekends Simone showed up at church events with that polished smile, always asking the right questions about our family. "She knows things," I said quietly. "Where I visit my mother on Wednesdays, that Hailey's dorm is 2 hours away. Even which side of the bed you sleep on now." My voice stayed level, but inside, the pieces clicked together with painful clarity. This wasn't stolen moments. Simone had been invited into the edges of our life, into my life. Graham rubbed the back of his neck, a familiar gesture, whenever he was cornered. "You're blowing this out of proportion. Simone's been a friend to both of us. She lost her husband. She understands what it's like when things get routine." Routine. I let the word just sit there. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, drank it slowly. The cool liquid grounded me. He followed, hovered near the island where his phone still lay innocently. "How long have you both been waiting for me to step aside?" The question silenced him again. He opened his mouth, closed it. For a second, the mask slipped. I saw the calculation there. The man who'd already imagined a whole new chapter without me in it. "We didn't plan to hurt you," he finally said, "but people change. Vivian, maybe it's time we faced that." I set the glass down carefully. No slamming, no tears. Just the quiet weight of knowing. "I'm not making this harder for you, Graham. I'm just refusing to make it easy." He tried another angle, voice softening. "Let's not do this tonight. The kids don't need to know. We can figure it out privately." His eyes flicked to my pocket, where the envelope sat. He didn't know I had it. Not yet. I thought about Trevor, 24, building his own life, and Hailey, 19, finally finding her footing away from home. The thought of dragging them into this made my chest tighten. But something else steadied me. The truth. I needed to understand how deep this went before deciding what to do with it. Graham reached for me, a tentative hand on my arm. I stepped back. His touch, once comforting, now felt like a transaction. "You're emotional," he murmured. "I get it, but we've built a life here. Don't throw it away over one mistake." One mistake. The same phrase Simone had used earlier, in that same careful tone. They had their narrative locked in. The distant wife, the lonely widow, the inevitable drift. I almost laughed at how neatly it wrapped around their choices. Instead, I looked at him. The damp hair, the familiar jawline, the man I'd shared meals and a bed and decades with, and felt a strange detachment settle in. "Go to bed, Graham," I said. "We both need rest." He lingered, searching my face for the explosion he expected. When it didn't come, he climbed the stairs, slowly. I waited until his footsteps faded, then pulled out the envelope again. The lakeside condo details stared back under the kitchen light. A property listing, deposit notes, a future being built without me. I sat at the island, phone in hand, staring at the blank screen. My mind moved methodically now, past the initial shock. This was bigger than infidelity. They've been planning, waiting. The thought should have broken me. Instead, it sharpened something deep inside. Resolve. Cold and clear. The house was quiet again, but it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a stage where the final act had just started, and I was the only one who hadn't been given the script. The next morning came gray and quiet, the kind of autumn day that promises rain but holds off. I made coffee like always, the grinder's hum filling the kitchen while Graham dressed for work upstairs. He came down, tie slightly crooked, kissed my cheek out of habit. I let him. My face stayed neutral as he grabbed his keys and left. The door shut behind him, soft finality. Only then did I move. I started with our shared finances. Laptop, kitchen table, login after login, account after account. At first, the transfers looked innocent. Small amounts, wired regularly, to something called Wexler Cove Consulting. Graham had mentioned it once a tax consultant Simone recommended. Helps with the business deductions, he'd said casually, months ago, at dinner. I'd nodded then, trusted him. Now I dug deeper. The company linked straight back to Simone, her signature on the filings, her address. The payments weren't huge, but consistent enough to matter. Joint account money. Our money. I screenshot everything. Heart steady. Mind racing through what it meant. Up in Graham's home office, the room smelled like paper and faint leather from his chair. I went through the drawers, methodically, not rushing. That's when I found the folder. Printouts of the lakeside condo. Same details from the envelope Simone dropped. Deposit schedules. A draft separation agreement dated weeks earlier. A list of our assets neatly divided in Graham's handwriting. And a note that stopped me cold. Vivian will resist at first. Wait until Hailey leaves for school. My fingers traced the ink. The date matched Hailey's move-in day. This wasn't just an affair. It was a calculated exit strategy. Time to leave me exactly where I'd be most vulnerable. Kids, gone. Finances, quietly drained. The story, already shaped. The betrayal sank deeper. But I didn't cry. I photographed every page. Careful angles, clear lighting, evidence. That's what mattered now. I sat in his chair for a long moment, staring at the note. The window overlooked our backyard. The maple tree we planted when Trevor was small. Memories tried to surface. I pushed them down. Not now. Feeling it fully would come later. Right now, I needed clarity. I called Paula Sinclair. She picked up on the second ring. Voice warm, no nonsense, like always. "Vivian, you sound off. What's going on?" I told her everything. The message, Simone at the door, the folder, the note. No tears, just facts. Paula listened without interrupting, the way only a woman who'd survived her own ugly divorce could. Men like Graham don't fear tears, she said. When I finished, they fear paperwork. Don't confront him yet. Document everything. And whatever you do, don't leave the house. Her practicality anchored me. We talked for 20 minutes. She told me how she'd learned the hard way about hidden accounts and smooth-talking husbands. By the end, she gave me a name. Walter Doyle, family law. In town, old school, but sharp. Tell him I sent you. He doesn't do drama. He does strategy. I thanked her, hung up. The house felt different now. Less like a sanctuary, more like a chessboard. I made copies of every document on our home printer, tucked the originals back exactly where I'd found them. Small victories in small details. That afternoon, Hailey called from school. Her voice was light, excited about a new class. Dad texted me yesterday, she said casually. Asked if I'd be upset if Mom moved closer to Grandma. Said you two might need space or something. Everything okay? The floor tilted under me. I gripped the phone tighter. Graham was already planting seeds, rewriting the story with the kids. We're figuring some things out, honey, I said, keeping my tone even. Focus on your studies. I love you. After we hung up, I stood at the kitchen window again. Rain had finally started, soft drops streaking the glass. I thought about the man who once carried me over that threshold, who coached Trevor's soccer team, who held Hailey through her first heartbreak. That man felt distant now, replaced by someone capable of cold, careful planning. But I wasn't helpless. Paula's words echoed. Paperwork, protection first. I forwarded the key photos to a secure email, made an appointment with Walter Doyle for the next day. Graham came home that evening with flowers, white roses, my favorite. Once upon a time. He set them on the counter with a gentle smile. I hate how last night went. I still care about you. Vivian, we can work through this. I accepted the flowers, arranged them in a vase. My hands moved steadily. Thank you, I said simply. But I saw it for exactly what it was. Damage control, not remorse. He watched me, searching for cracks. I gave him none. That night, as he slept beside me, I lay awake on the edge of the bed, listening to his breathing. The lakeside condo papers haunted my thoughts. The note about waiting for Hailey. They'd turned our whole life into a timeline, a transaction. I wouldn't let them write the ending. I met Walter Doyle the next afternoon, in his modest office downtown. The waiting room smelled like coffee and old books. At 58, Walter had a calm, measured presence. Silver hair, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of steady gaze that made you believe he'd seen every version of this story before. No false sympathy, no dramatic promises. Do you want revenge, he asked, after reviewing the documents I'd brought, or do you want protection? Both, I answered without hesitation, but protection first. He nodded, flipping through the photos on my tablet. Smart. Using joint funds for this consulting company could work in your favor during division of assets. And the premeditation, that note about waiting for your daughter to leave, that shows intent, strengthens your position. Walter laid out the immediate steps clearly. Back up everything. Photograph more. Stay in the house. Don't sign anything. Don't reveal how much you know. Play the long game, Mrs. Cross. Let him think you're still processing. The more he relaxes, the more he'll slip. I left his office with a folder of notes and a clearer head. The drive home felt different. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was preparing. Graham tried a new approach that evening. Came home early with takeout from my favorite Italian place. I've been thinking, he said. Maybe we've both been unhappy, but I still care about you, Vivian, deeply. I twirled pasta on my fork, nodded slowly. His words sounded sincere enough for someone who didn't know I'd already met with a lawyer that morning. It's a lot to take in, I replied. Inside. I noted every careful phrase, every attempt to rewrite us as two people who'd simply drifted. The next few days followed a pattern. Flowers, coffee in bed, mentions of old memories, damage control, wrapped in concern. I accepted it all with quiet grace, offered little in return. Each night, I added new observations to my private notes. The way he checked his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. The sudden interest in my mother's health. Then Hailey called again. Dad asked me yesterday if I thought you'd be happier closer to Grandma, she said, voice uncertain. He made it sound like it was your idea. Mom, is something wrong? The manipulation stung. I kept my voice warm. We're working through some grown-up stuff, sweetheart. Your dad and I have been together a long time. Don't worry. Focus on your classes. After the call, I sat in the quiet kitchen and felt the full weight of it. Graham wasn't just leaving. He was trying to make me the one who left, painting me as the unstable one, the one who needed space. The strategy was cruel and patient. I met with Walter again for a follow-up. He reviewed my new documentation. Approved. You're doing this right. Stay put. Gather more if you can. When the time comes, we'll be ready. Graham's mask showed small cracks as the week wore on. He grew restless when I didn't argue or cry. One evening, he found me looking through old photo albums, deliberately. Remember that trip to the cabin, he asked, I sitting beside me. I remember, I said softly. But I closed the album before he could steer the conversation. The old memories didn't soften me the way they might have once. They felt like pages from someone else's book now. That night, rain against the windows. I stood in the doorway of Hailey's empty room. Her posters still hung on the walls. A few stuffed animals on the bed. Graham had been willing to wait until she was gone to upend everything. The thought hardened my resolve even further. I wasn't just protecting myself anymore. I was protecting the truth before he could rewrite it completely. Walter's words stayed with me. Sometimes the room matters more than the argument. I needed the right moment, the right audience. Graham came up behind me in the hallway. You've been quiet lately. I turned, met his eyes, just thinking. He searched my face for the woman who used to forgive easily. He wouldn't find her. Not this time. I had the evidence. I had the plan. And for the first time since that message lit up his phone, I felt something close to control coming back. 1 week later, the anniversary dinner for Graham's company arrived like an inevitable storm. 30 years of his small manufacturing business, celebrated at the local country club. Colleagues, friends, church members, family, all in one room. Trevor drove in from out of state. Hailey came home for the weekend. Graham insisted I attend. We need to show a united front, he said that morning, adjusting his tie in the mirror. For the business, for the kids. I agreed quietly. Inside, I knew. This was the room Walter had talked about. I prepared carefully. Simple black dress, pearls Graham gave me on our 20th anniversary. In my clutch, a thin envelope holding the most damning pieces. Screenshots of the messages, bank transfer records, the lakeside condo listing, a scanned copy of that handwritten note. Not everything, just enough. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and autumn centerpieces. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the air. I moved through the crowd with practiced ease, accepted compliments on how lovely the event looked. Simone was there, of course, officially an event consultant. Deep burgundy dress, hair swept up elegantly. Our eyes met across the room. She gave a polite nod. I returned it. No warmth. Graham stayed close to me most of the evening, hand occasionally on my lower back. A performance for the audience. Trevor and Hailey seemed relieved to see us together. You two look good, Trevor said during cocktails. I smiled, said nothing. When dinner was served, Graham took the stage for his speech. The room quieted. He looked every bit the successful, grateful husband. Tall, distinguished, confident. 30 years, he began, voice warm through the microphone. I couldn't have done it without the support of my incredible wife, Vivian. She stood by me through every challenge. Applause rippled through the room. I sat at our table, hands folded, feeling the weight of that envelope in my lap. Simone stood near the side, smiling like a woman who'd already won. Graham kept building momentum. We've had our share of ups and downs, like any long marriage. Sometimes life asks us to make brave changes. to step into new chapters with grace and honesty. The words landed precisely. Brave changes, new chapters. I saw a few people exchange knowing glances. The narrative was already spreading. Quietly, tastefully. The crosses were separating amicably. Mature adults making civilized choices. Graham positioning himself as the thoughtful one. Moving forward. My pulse stayed steady. I glanced at Trevor and Hailey, confused but hopeful. Simone's smile deepened slightly. Graham wrapped up to more applause. Stepping away from the microphone, he glanced at me, something like relief in his face. The performance was going well. I stood up. The chair scraped softly against the floor. Conversations dipped. Eyes turned toward me. Graham paused mid-step, surprise flickering across his face. I walked to the front, envelope in hand, heels measured on the polished wood. The room grew still, expectant. This wasn't on the program. I stopped at the microphone. For a moment, I just looked out at all those faces, people we'd known for years, neighbors, business partners. Then I spoke, voice clear and calm. Before my husband talks about brave changes, I said, I think everyone here should know who's actually been planning them. The silence deepened. Graham took a half step forward. I kept going. I'm not here to make a scene. I'm here to share the truth. I opened the envelope, held up the first page briefly. Bank records, joint funds, transferred to a company tied to Simone Wexler. I set it down, lifted another. A lakeside condo they've been touring together. Another page. And this note, in my husband's handwriting. Vivian will resist at first. Wait until Hailey leaves for school. Gasps rippled through the room. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. The documents spoke for themselves. Simone had gone pale near the side wall. Graham's face tightened. His hand clenched at his side. I don't expect this room to choose sides tonight, I said, meeting eyes with old friends. I just needed everyone to remember what actually happened. Trevor stood slowly at our table, staring at his father. Hailey's eyes went wide, filling with tears. The weight of the moment pressed down on all of us. Graham moved toward the microphone. Vivian is emotional right now, he said, forcing a concerned smile. This is a private matter. No, Graham, I interrupted, evenly, still holding the mic. I was emotional last week. Tonight, I'm documented. The room stayed frozen. Cameras that had been recording the speeches kept rolling. I stepped back from the mic, left the envelope on the stand. The truth was out. Not all of it. Enough. Simone slipped toward the exit. Paula, who'd come as my guest, moved subtly to block her path. A quiet word I couldn't hear from where I stood. I went back to my seat. The applause from earlier had died completely. In its place, stunned silence, and the low murmur of people beginning to process what they'd just watched. Graham stood alone near the stage, the confident mask finally cracked. For the first time, he looked like a man who no longer controlled the story. The silence in that ballroom felt alive, pressing against my skin. I sat back down at our table, the envelope now on the podium behind me, like an accusation no one could ignore. Heads turned between Graham and me. Whispers spread like cracks across ice. Graham recovered enough to reach for the microphone again. Everyone, please. Vivian's been under a lot of stress. This isn't the time or place. I didn't stand this time, just spoke from my seat, voice carrying in the quiet room. The documents are there for anyone who wants to see them. Transfers from our joint account, the condo they picked out together, the plan to wait until our daughter was away at school before pushing me out. Trevor rose fully now, chair scraping loudly. Dad, is this true? Graham's mouth opened. No smooth answer came out. Hailey sat beside her brother, tears slipping down her cheeks. You asked me if Mom was moving to Grandma's, she said, voice small but clear. You made it sound like it was her idea. The room watched the family unravel in real time. I felt no triumph, only a heavy sadness, mixed with relief. This was the cost of truth. Graham tried again, stepped closer to the mic. We can discuss this privately, as a family. No, I said calmly. You chose this room to talk about brave changes. Now the room knows what those changes actually looked like. Simone had reached the side exit. Paula stepped smoothly into her path, not touching her, just standing there with quiet authority. Leaving won't make the paperwork disappear, Simone. Simone's face flushed. She glanced back at Graham. He was too busy trying to salvage the moment to help her. For the first time, their coordinated story had no response prepared. I stood once more, only to address the room with finality. I don't need anyone here to choose sides. I just need you all to remember the truth. The rest will be handled privately, the way it should have been from the start. Graham finally reached the podium, gripped the mic, knuckles white. Vivian, this is humiliating for all of us. I looked at him directly. Humiliating is finding out your husband and his mistress have been planning your exit while you're still sleeping in the same house. This is just clarity. The words landed without venom, just fact. Trevor walked over, placed a hand on my shoulder. Hailey followed, wiping her eyes. Their support in that moment meant more than I could put into words. Around us, guests started murmuring, some standing to leave, others staying to process. Phones were out. The story would spread, but on my terms, this time. Graham stood alone in the center of the stage area, spotlight still on him from his earlier speech. The confident businessman who'd built a company from nothing now looked small, lost. For the first time in our marriage, he had no control over the narrative, no prepared lines, no quiet agreement from me to keep things smooth. Simone slipped out a side door once Paula stepped aside. I didn't stop her. She wasn't the main problem anymore. As the crowd slowly dispersed, a few longtime friends came over with quiet words of support. Others avoided eye contact, unsure how to navigate the sudden fracture. I understood. Change this sharp leaves everyone unsteady. Graham finally stepped down, walked toward me. His face was pale. We need to talk. At home. I gathered my clutch. We will, but not tonight. Tonight, the kids and I are going to process what just happened. Trevor drove us home, Hailey and me. The car was quiet, just the hum of the engine, the occasional sniffle from the back seat. I stared out the window at the passing streetlights, feeling the adrenaline slowly fade. The house was dark when we got there. I made tea for Hailey, sat with both kids in the living room. We didn't rehash every detail, just sat together. Trevor apologized for not seeing the signs earlier. Hailey hugged me tightly, whispered, "You didn't embarrass us, Mom." He did. Their words settled something deep inside me. Not victory, not yet, but the beginning of healing. Upstairs. I paused at the doorway to our bedroom. Graham's things were still there. But the space already felt foreign. I thought back to the shower running, the phone lighting up, Simone at the door. The whole chain of moments that led here. In the quiet of the house, with my kids safe downstairs, I let myself take one long, slow breath. Graham no longer controlled the story, and for the first time in weeks, neither did the fear. The days after the anniversary dinner moved slowly, like waking from a long, disorienting dream. Graham sent text after text asking to talk. Simone emailed a long, carefully worded apology that somehow still cast her as the misunderstood party. I read them once, then forwarded the relevant ones to Walter. No replies from me. Not yet. I met with Walter again early the following week. We began the formal process. Protective orders for the finances. Petitions for temporary arrangements. He reminded me to keep moving forward, methodically. You don't have to destroy him, he said. Just make sure the truth does its work. That felt right. I wasn't interested in revenge that left me bitter. I wanted freedom from the weight I'd been carrying far too long. Trevor came by the house a few evenings later. We sat on the back porch as the leaves turned deeper shades of red and gold. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said, staring into his coffee. "I thought you were just being distant lately. I didn't see what Dad was doing." I reached over, squeezed his hand. None of us saw the full picture until we had to. That's okay. We see it now. Hailey stayed a few extra days before heading back to school. One afternoon, she found me in the kitchen, reorganizing the pantry, an old habit when my mind needed order. She wrapped her arms around me from behind, rested her chin on my shoulder. "You didn't embarrass us," she whispered again. "He did. I'm proud of you for staying calm. I don't know if I could have." Her words healed something I hadn't realized was still raw. We cried a little then. Not from pain, from release. Mother and daughter, standing together in the same kitchen where that first message had appeared. I went back, over the next few weeks, to the places that started it all. The bathroom where Graham had been showering. The counter where his phone lit up. The front door where Simone stood, expecting an empty house. Each spot felt smaller now, less powerful. I stood in the steam of my own shower one morning, let the hot water run over my shoulders, washing away tension I'd normalized for years. I'd stopped carrying the need to make myself smaller to keep the peace. Stopped carrying the fear that speaking up would break everything. The truth had already broken what needed breaking. What remained was space. For me, for my kids, for whatever came next. Graham moved out 2 weeks later. The divorce would take time, but the lines were drawn clearly. He looked older, loading the last box into his car. Part of me still mourned the man I'd married. I no longer mourned the version he became. On a quiet evening, I stood at the kitchen window again. The house was mine now, in a way it hadn't been in years. Not because of victory, because of honesty. Sometimes the doorbell doesn't bring the person who ruins your life. Sometimes it brings the truth you are finally ready to face. If you're still with me, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right there. If you've ever had to stay calm while your whole life quietly changed underneath you, I want you to know you're not alone. Drop a comment and tell me how you're doing. There are more stories like this coming, real, raw, and hopeful. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Okay, be honest with me in the comments. Would you have stayed quiet for 12 minutes like I did? Or would you have confronted him the second that text lit up? Comment documented if you'd have played the long game like I did. Or confront now if you'd have blown up right there in the kitchen. Like this video if that ballroom moment gave you chills. Subscribe for the next story in this series. And tell me, what's the one thing you'd need to see before you knew a marriage was really over? This video is completely fictional, created only for entertainment, education, and dramatic storytelling. If any part of this felt familiar, remember, staying calm isn't the same as staying silent, and you deserve the truth, even when it's quiet at first.